of you who have joined us through live on Zoom everywhere. We are here today on 21st of August 2020 for our fourth episode or the fourth seminar on NEP 2020.
But I can't hear them.
So what we are here up to today is that we'll try to bring out 10 new issues, and these issues will be these issues will be discussed by Ramesh Patnaik sir, and along with him as discussant we have Dr. Hargopal today. Ramesh Patnaik sir has been the convener for Andhra Pradesh Save Education Committee, and he was also one of the founding members and now the presidium member of the All India Forum for Right to Education. Dr. Hargopal, as we all have known from earlier days, he has been an ardent educational activist and activist in many other fronts pertaining many social issues. We are glad to have both of them here today with us, and without taking much of time, I'll pass on pass on the session to we'll pass on the session to Ramesh Patnaik sir. Sir.
Okay. Thank you, Shashank. I think here your name is Shankar, and is it not Shashank and Shankar the same? I don't know. And good evening, Jagmohan Singh sir, Chairperson, All India Forum for Right to Education, and Professor Hargopal sir is there in the program, and many candidates. And let me take to the subject immediately such that we can save the time. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Am I clear?
Very well.
Yes.
Thank you. Friends, as you know, this Modi government, this is the second innings. In the first innings itself, in 2015, they have initiated a debate for the so-called debate, quote unquote, in 2015 January itself. They have invited responses to a set of questions, 33 questions on school education, higher education, and other things. But the questions were formulated in their own their own structure. So you say yes or no, it will go only strengthening their structure. Still, lakhs of people responded to it. And then naturally, it was an online response. So nobody need to see them. They have appointed Sri TSR Subramanian Committee, and they have looked into the reports. As it was reported that they were looked into the reports, lakhs of reports, we do not believe. But anyway, Dr. Subramanian, means TSR Subramanian, gave his report on 27th May 2016. And the report was put to dustbin. And it was not released to the public. And TSR Subramanian had to go to the press to release his report. The reasons are not very clear, but one can assume that the TSR Subramanian report was not against commercialization of education. It also allowed a space for other agenda also. Maybe the ruling class was not very happy, maybe not fully satisfied with the TSR Subramanian report. Maybe their agenda was not fully covered in his report, so they neglected the report. And then they have issued a 43 pages document, which they called some inputs in formulation of a new education policy or national education policy. It was in the website for long, and there were debates on the document. But in the meanwhile, it has come out. It had come out that the document was essentially a copy of the Nagpur document of the RSS. It has become very public. So ultimately, the government withdrew the document, this some inputs document, which is 43 pages, which was there in June 2016. Later, they have appointed Dr. K. Kasturi Rangan Committee. And the Kasturi Rangan Committee gave its report mostly in October 2018. And its date was April 18, of course. It was given in October 2018, but it was not released then by the government. The report was released only on 31st May 2019, the last date of last year, earlier year. Then the report was not even available outside. Then there was a pressure and they published the report on 1st June 2019. But that is all the story of reports and responses. You can just neglect them because government has neglected all the reports. They have initiated a new document that is 1 minute. Let me just tell you the date. I have just placed it somewhere. I'm just giving you. Then they have come with some 53 pages document on say June, 10th June, on 10th June in 2019. Then some 55-page document on 28th October. That was called final report, but it was not final. The final report they told again on 31st December 2019. So on 31st December 19, they have come with a document. And ultimately, the final document which was approved by this cabinet is 29th July 2020. Why I'm telling all these things is that you can safely neglect all the reports, Subramanian Committee report and Kasturirangan report, because ultimately the government policy did not depend on those reports. The government policy started formulating essentially this year only, when they have started this year, means the last day of in 2019, December 31st, they have given a draft and they developed ultimately into this policy on 28th July, 29th July of this year. So there are two drafts. One is 28th October of last year. Another is 31st December of last year. And now you have the final policy on 28th July, 29th July of this year. So why I'm telling all these things is that if you directly read the 29th July document, you will not be able to really understand what they are hiding. If you want to know what they are trying to hide, just you will have to see the earlier two drafts, which was released on 31st December last year and 28th October last year. If you could hold these two documents, read all the three documents in conjunction, all are about 60 pages, then you will understand what they are hiding. So now let me directly go to the subject. As it is advertised that there are 10 new issues. These 10 new issues, it's very difficult to cover in this small time, but I will just enumerate them with a brief introduction. If we require any elaboration, then we can go it in the questioning section. And of course, Professor Hargopal is there very much. He can elaborate on everything. But let me just go them by issues. Why I call new issues, the title is called 10 new issues, because these are the new attacks, more than what Congress was doing. Congress was commercializing education, as you all know it. But in commercialization of education also, there is a new contribution from the present BJP government in this new education policy and all other things. So all these 10 points are new attacks on education. So I am telling you 10 new issues. Now let me just enumerate them one by one. The first question is constitutional values. As and when we analyze an education policy, for that matter, any policy, any public policy in our country, in the first place, we see whether the policy is in conformity with the constitutional values of the land. And very clearly, this policy doesn't means is not in consistency with the constitution values, constitutional values. But more glaringly, this policy does not include two critical terms, socialism and secularism. You know, socialism and secularism are two critical terms in our constitution preamble. These two terms are not there in 60 pages, 66 pages document of new education policy. So it is not that by mistake they are not there, because even the drafts they are not there. In Kasturirangan report they are not there. In 43 pages they are not there. So it is they are maintaining all the way all these documents without these two words. As you know, BJP, RSS are against secularism and socialism. And one MP has now gone to the Supreme Court asking that these two words doesn't fit in our constitutional framework and should be excluded. And you know, RSS has taken very strong position that socialism, secularism has nothing to do with the Indian ethos. They also believe democracy does not suit with Indian ethos, and our constitution they do not believe in, but they have concentrated that socialism and secularism doesn't go with our Indian ethos. So dropping of these two words from our new education policy, National Policy on Education 2020, is not accidental, but is a follow-up of their policy perspective. And they want new education policy and a new education system without secularism and socialism. What are the possible fallouts of this exclusion? When you are dropping socialism, in India there was never socialism, but there were some social welfare things. So from this dropping of socialism, they are also dropping social justice as a concept in our education system. They will not pursue social justice as it is being pursued for the last 7 decades. Now they will not pursue social justice, that we will go into elaboration in the later period. And also, you must have noted in the 66 pages document, there is a repeated reference to the fundamental duties, 51, Article 51K and all that, but there is no single reference to the fundamental rights. So secularism is not there, socialism is not there, fundamental rights are not there. And if you go into the details, you will also find that there is no federalism in the new education policy. In formulation of this policy, you will find that there is no federalism in this policy. So they are breaking very radically with this constitution, the present constitution. Once Professor Hargopal, I think long back, some 10 years back, he has told, Constitution of India has become a radical document today because the ruling classes are opposing it. And now we have to uphold it. So let me proceed from there for number 2. Number 2 is commercialization. All of us know that how Congress government has been commercializing education, particularly from 1986 policy onwards, and it was intensified after this liberalization, globalization program that has come into, LPG program has come into with P.V. Narasimha Rao and Jagmohan Singh. But there is some problem. Our constitution do not allow commercialization. If you go to Mohini Jain versus government of Karnataka, in that case, Justice Kuldeep Singh has told a private trust, a private association can establish and administer educational institutions. There is no problem in that. But they should understand they are the instrument of the state. They are doing the service what the state is expected to. And they are only delivering those goods which are the rights of the people by Article 41 and 45. So private institutions shall not charge students, collect fee more than what the government collects for the same course. So this is called the instrumentality concept. A private school, college or university, the management should understand that they are only doing the they are only doing sharing the responsibility of the government. So they shall not collect fees. If they collect fees, they shall not collect more than what government collects for their respective courses. This was what Mohini Jain case, Kuldeep Singh, the single judgment. It was very outstanding judgment, very much in conformity with our constitutional values, very much in conformity with Article 41 and 45 of our constitution. but there was a furor from the commercial courses. Then came the Unnikrishnan case. Unnikrishnan versus Government of Andhra Pradesh, in that a division bench has given a judgment that no fees can be collected from the students, and more fees can be collected from the students when compared with the government institutions for their respective courses. That is also allowed. But they told that you cannot make profit. They emphatically told education cannot be traded with. You cannot do business in education, so you cannot make a profit. You have to cross-subsidize. You have to collect more fee from the well-to-do students and cross-subsidize the poor students. You have to go the institution as a self-sufficient institution. Only for that you can collect fees. This is the Unnikrishnan judgment, and they told that you cannot make profits, you cannot make trade and business in education. It was a compromise, of course, it was a great compromise with the constitutional values, but it was minimum a regulation, it was minimum a limitation on the commercialization of education. Then came the UPA TMA Pai judgment. This TMA Pai judgment has taken a further step towards commercialization of education, and they told that you can collect fee more than what government collects for a given subject, given course, and you can make profits also. TMA Pai tells that you can make profits also. But again, they had put one limitation that you can make profits, but those profits have to be spent for the institution development. You cannot take the profits away from the institution. That was a big block for the capital's operations, because capital come not to develop your institution. If you get profit, they will take the profit away. They may close the institution if their rate of profit is low here, or even they find a better rate of profit in some other country, they will withdraw capital from here and go. So the capital operations are opposed, means there is a limitation that you cannot withdraw the profit from the institution. You will have to spend it in the institution. This limitation is a limitation for the corporate houses. For local corporates and local institutions, they can bypass this by executive maneuvers. But big international corporations cannot bypass these things by executive maneuvers. They want a clear legislation in their favor to pump in capital and withdraw capital. TMA Pai judgment, very notorious for allowing commercialization in education, and all the rest of the judgments after that have come in favor, means on the basis of the TMA Pai judgment, which have helped commercialization of education. But TMA Pai put this particular limitation on the profits, withdrawal of the profits or capital. But now, and Congress could not break this. Congress could not break the TMA Pai judgment. It requires a great hero like Modi and BJP, which is grown up in the value system of India, to break this ultimate change to commercialization of education. And now in this new education policy, they have stated the profits can be withdrawn. Not in this very language, they have put a different language. They said that you need not spend the same profit in the same institution. This way also they did not tell. They tell that the profits are the surplus that accrued in the institution has to be spent. There is a positive thing, has to be spent in education sector, not in India, not in the same state, not in the same institution. In education sector means you can make profit here and go to England and open another institution, go to Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, or Africa, or any country, and use the capital there. So you have to spend only in the education sector, not in India, not in the institution. In this way, this is the first great break and a great opportunity created for the commercialization of education. And already Mukesh Ambani is online, means on record to tell that he is interested to serve in education field. So now it is facilitated. I believe the central government will have to bring a legislation in favor of withdrawing the capitals from the institution. But if we can campaign in the meanwhile, that this is a great favor that is being done to the corporate houses, then we can solve the possible new legislation in favor, I mean, in persuasion of this policy. Policy itself is not a legislation, as you know. They have to bring many legislations. For commercialization, they will have to bring a new legislation. But if our people are informed, people of this country are informed that such a thing is in offing, then we can prepare the people to resist new possible legislation to withdraw capital, make profit, withdraw capital from the institutions. So I'm going to the third issue about school education. In school education, actually, it has been a popular demand that right to educate means the right of the child should be from nursery to class 12. And the present Right to Education Act provides, with all its limitations, right only from class 1 to 8 for elementary education. There has been popular movement. All India Forum for Right to Education has been demanding, and many other organizations also have been demanding, that a preschool should also be included as a part of right. Again, secondary school from 9th class to 12th class should also be included as a right. Now, this new education policy included school education from nursery to class 12. Very good. But while they have included, they have withdrawn 2 words from the Right to Education Act. The act is not now affected, it will be affected later. In this whole policy, in the school education part, they have not used either compulsory, either or right or free. There is no right, there is no free. The Right to Education Act, which has got right of the child for free and compulsory education up to age 14, 6 to 14. Now we are demanding from age 3 to 18. They made it age 3 to 18. They made it universal availability, but they have withdrawn 2 words, that is free education and right to education. So there is a very possibility that the Right to Education Act will be amended to withdraw the words right and free, these 2 words, and maybe extending it to, say, nursery to class 12. So you have got this way, on the one hand, they have expanded the educational opportunity in seemingly, but on the other hand, now government does not hold any responsibility to provide education to the children, any responsibility to freely provide education to the children. So now government is made free of any responsibility. And in this way, it is a liquidation of Article 21A, Right to Education article, which actually in 2002 they have brought. Now the very article will be liquidated because neither free nor right will be continued. In the school education, they have now instituted this 5+3+3+4. I believe we need not spend much time on this. If some other time, if we take it. But the only thing is that it's only, previously our school was 10+2. 10 years school education, class 1 to 10, and 2 years intermediate or pre-university course. In CBSE syllabus, it is class 1 to 12. So this class 1 to 12 now added nursery, LKG, UKG. So it is 15 years education. In this 15 years education, first 5 years they are calling foundation, then 3 years preparatory, another 3 years middle school, last 4 years secondary schools. This is not very big issue that we should debate minimum in the given small time. But I will have to tell you this much on school education. They have emphatically written the dichotomy between arts and sciences will be done away with in school education. The dichotomy between vocational courses and academic courses will be done away with. The dichotomy between curricular and co-curricular courses will be done away with. Many educational institutions, many educationists have been demanding these things, that this dichotomy should go. These walls should be destroyed. Now this dichotomy is done away with. But for what? but for what they have liquidated these things. From this, now they are bringing discrimination. Now mathematics is not compulsory for all students. Science is not compulsory for all students. So means history or civics are not compulsory for all students. Students can take vocational courses also in lieu of these academic courses. So when you are breaking the dichotomy, what is happening is that the poor, disadvantaged, discriminated students who are studying in government schools will be pushed by conditions of their life, conditions of the school towards vocational courses. And the well-to-do family children will pursue academic courses. So as long as there was a fixed syllabus, fixed course that all students, till today, all students, whether poor students or rich students, whether government school students or private school students, have been studying the same textbooks, same courses. All have been studying history, civics, geography, you call means physical sciences, biological sciences, mathematical sciences, 3 languages. These were the general courses for all students, all schools. But now, all the poor, disadvantaged students will be pushed to vocational courses, and all the well-to-do family students will be pursuing academic courses. While they are telling the dichotomy is being dissolved, actually a great China wall is being built between the poor and disadvantaged students and between the students coming from or you can also say that now government schools will be pursuing the vocational courses and extracurricular activities, and public schools will be pursuing academic courses and more concentrate on academic courses only. They will not play, they will not sing. So this way, while you are dissolving dichotomy, you have commissioned discrimination. So you have abolished dichotomy and you have commissioned discrimination in school education. This is a very dangerous move of the new education policy. And exclusion is very high at school level itself. While they have declared each student should go to school, it means shall pursue school education. Shall pursue school education does not mean shall go to school education. Now we have online education. At some place they have written there is a lot of dropout before class 5, before class 8, before class 10, before class 12. These students should also be given education. Our education should be universal. Every child should be given education. And what is the way? The way they have suggested is online education. So they are not telling that every child should come to the school. They are telling that those students who are not able to come to the school shall pursue online education. So the child labor system will continue, and child labor will continue their education through online. So this is what, while they have included from LKG to class 12, they have at the same time excluded the majority of the children who belonging to SC, ST, BC, OBC, minority, girls, transgender, and say physically different capabilities, children with different capabilities. So online education is another way of exclusion of the children from formal education. Minimum Right to Education Act was telling that all child should come to school, should regularly participate, should regularly be given education. If child is backward, given tutorial. Minimum, those things are being liquidated here. And also what they have liquidated is the distance norm. In the Right to Education Act, there is a distance norm that the primary school should be available within 1 kilometer, middle school within 3 kilometers, and high school within 5 kilometers. This policy does not speak about at all the distance norm of schools. And they have talked about rationalization of schools, cluster of schools, and they have misquoted in their own interest the Kothari Commission, their school cluster concept, and they may be merging the schools by violating the present distance norm, and they may be. And I only like you to recollect that in Niti Aayog document also, This they wanted to do away with the distance norm. So distance norm also they are going to violate in their right to education part, and they are going to close the schools, and children, majority of them will be given online education. So let me go to the next question, that is centralization. The centralization is another basic attack of this new education policy. There is one, now they are establishing Higher Education Council of India. Sorry, Higher Education Commission of India. And under this you will have Higher Education Regulatory Authority, and then you will have Higher Education Grants Commission, you will have General Education Council, you will have National Accreditation Council. So 4 or 5 bodies will be working under the Higher Education Commission of India. So all these 5-6 bodies structure will be will be controlling entire universities in the nation. Entire universities. They will be directly controlling all the universities in the country, because the document does not speak about the regulatory role or facilitative role or conducting role or coordination role of state governments and are of the higher education councils in different states. So now all the universities will be controlled by central bodies under the umbrella organization of Higher Education Commission of India, and 5 of them will be supporting them. So all the universities will be controlled by central. If you call it centralization, some people like it to concentration of power instead of centralization. So whether you call centralization of administration or concentration of power, that is what in the form. And then again, you have got, coming to the school education, you have got NCERT. You know, NCERT is there. NCERT formulates the curricular framework, national curricular framework. This national curricular framework is not, means states need not compulsorily follow NCF on the date, as on the date. In every state, there is an SCERT, State Council for Education, Research and Training. This SCERTs reformulate their own curriculum. In Andhra Pradesh also, we pursued the government. They wanted to download the NCF. We pursued the government to formulate their own courses. If they feel the NCF is good, they can take it as a model, but they have to formulate their own curriculum. So every state are forming their own curricular framework, and then they are formulating their syllabus, and ultimately they are writing the textbooks. But now, under the new education policy, National Policy on Education 2020, only NCERT will formulate the curriculum, they will formulate the syllabus, they will write the textbooks. SCERT can also do it, but they are not very important. They have written very clearly that national acceptance will be there only for NCERT curriculum and NCERT syllabus and NCERT textbooks. They will write the textbooks for school education from Delhi. They will be supplied to the states. You may translate in your own languages. Then they have given some concession to the states, telling that you can publish some supplements. So Andhra Pradesh or Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Kashmir, Punjab, any state can publish supplements. But again, there is one examination at the end of 12th class. That is called National Testing Agency, is already there. NTA is already there. This NTA is now getting new powers, that they will organize entrance examination for all higher educational institutions throughout India. So if you have passed your 12th class in Andhra Pradesh or Punjab or Kashmir, you will have to again pass NTA and compete a competitive examination and get your seat in higher educational institutions in your own state. Say if you are in Vijayawada, there is one SRR college. If you want to admission in SRR college in Vijayawada, or you say Hyderabad Degree College in Hyderabad, you will have to write examination in NTA and on the basis of the marks procured there, you will be given admission to in your own college in your own city. The question is not to centralize the admission. That may be relieving the people. But the question is that NTA examination, the content of NTA examination is major. So the content of NTA examination will be completely centralized, if the word is acceptable, or you can say directly communal. It will be Manuvada content, and you will have to pass that content, excel in that content to get admission into higher education. So this NTA will be a bottleneck between school education and higher education. It stands at the end of school education, controls the school education from above, and it controls higher education from the below, as it is the starting point from higher education. And the NTA will be, I believe, will be given more importance than any new institution that is going to be established under NPE 2020. So that is what they are going to do. And this is centralization of school education, centralization of higher education, and all the concentration of power in the central government. This centralization is a requirement both for Manu and market. Market, I am not talking of only World Bank. Yes, of course, World Bank is the most reactionary organization we have been fighting. But I believe Indian corporate houses are also very much favorable for this centralization of power. They also require this centralization of power. Corporate houses, both foreign and domestic, want centralization of decision making such that at a single node by the central government, they can expand their educational, means their what you call ventures in education throughout India. Instead of going to every state and pursuing every state government, they want a central legislation where they are given the whole Indian market at their it will be approachable for them and they can expand in that space. So this centralization is the need of the corporate houses of the day, both domestic and foreign. So I do not only blame World Bank, the way this government, which is pursuing the corporate policies at every point, is also bringing this national education policy in the favor of the corporate houses, both foreign and national. National, we shall not say domestic and foreign capital. So my point is that centralization or concentration of power in the central government hands is the requirement of the both Manu and market. I am moving to the fifth point, higher educational courses and admissions. Many people have questions, what will be the higher education officer new education policy? They will continue the 3 years degree. They are introducing 4 years honors degree. They are also introducing 5 years integrated PG, which are there in different universities even today. These will become all India programs, 3 years degree, 4 years honors degree, 5-year integrated PG course. This is one thing. What is new thing is that the 3 years, those who have completed 3 years degree, they will do 2 years PG. Those who will complete 4 years degree will do 1 year PG. Maybe this is also old. What is new is that after joining the degree, if you drop out at year 1, you will be given a certificate. It is called certificate course. If you drop out at after 2 years, you will be given a certificate. This is called diploma certificate. So these are two new exit points are being provided, and this shows, and this becomes not an opportunity for the poor. For the rich, it becomes opportunity. For the poor, it becomes a way to be pushed out. When there is a more fee, or then there is a harassment, when there you cannot cope up with the course, now people are able to put up with and building pressure upon the government to support such that they can continue education. Tomorrow, the people disadvantaged, discriminated, and marginalized people, SC, ST, BC, OBC, minority, women, handicapped, transgender, all these transgenders are not there already. All these people will be pushed out of the universities even after they complete year 1 or year 2. So what I'm trying to tell is that when our education system is founded on the basis of commercialization of education, when there is a commercialization of education, the foundation of the policy, when the rulers are looking backward, all the provisions, whatever is good will not be implemented, and whatever is bad, that will be implemented, and whatever is good, that will be distorted. It will stand distorted of its own. Maybe this exit policy you cannot say by face value to be something reactionary, but it will prove reactionary in the given context where education is founded on commercialization and where the rulers are looking backward to re-establish the caste system, to re-establish all the walls between the society, and to deny education to the majority of the population. So that is the whole thing in the structure of the higher education. And now the major issue is reservations. Reservations, I believe I need not explain in this conference that reservations have been introduced to bring equity, because in the society is iniquitous. To bring equity, reservations are being provided by our constitution, and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar has provided, and many other disadvantaged sections of the society are being helped by these reservations. I am not talking only SC, ST, BC people. Even there are reservations for the women in many institutions. Say in Andhra Pradesh, teacher training institutions, 50% seats are reserved for the women. So these women come from forward caste also. So it's not only caste question. And in recently, minority is being also provided with reservation. In recently, economically backward sections are being also provided with reservation. So reservation is attending iniquitous society, problems from the iniquitous society. They are nothing to do just with SCs and STs. And they are provided in the Constitution of India. And there is a big debate throughout India. And those reservations, there is no single word about reservations in admission of the students to colleges and universities. I believe this should create a furor in the India. I don't know what is happening, why we are failing to mobilize the democratic forces, why we are failing to mobilize the Dalit forces, minority forces, women organizations. It's a very great attack on the total rights of the disadvantaged of this nation, and it's an attack on the constitutional provisions. And I would only draw your attention that the recent judgments of the Supreme Court, 2 judgments, in which ones they have said that promotion is not a fundamental right. In the second, they said is that reservation itself is not a fundamental right. So Supreme Court is also telling this. At this juncture, government and parliament should come forward to emphatically tell that reservation is a fundamental right, and if required, they should make a constitutional amendment to protect the reservation. But this government in its policy want to do away with the reservations, so they have not a single use of reservation. I have been telling you about the drafts. Earlier draft, October's draft, in October 2019, they issued a draft. In that draft, they have included reservation. Kasturirangan report, there is no reservation. But in the October draft, they have included the word reservation. But in December draft, they have excluded the word reservation. So dropping of this word reservation is not something by miss. It's after a great debate inside their own organization, they have decided. At a stage, they have included under the pressure of the movement. But after a great debate, they have withdrawn the reservation, maybe under the pressure of RSS. They have withdrawn the provision of reservation from the new education policy. So I believe we should be able to take this agenda to the whole masses of India, both democratic sections of the society and the disadvantaged sections of the society. And another thing is that as for the hostel facilities, scholarships, now they are telling that scholarships will be given to only meritorious. And just they have added meritorious among the disadvantaged. So all the disadvantaged sections will not get scholarships. There is no any word about the stipends. So the hostel facilities, stipends, scholarships will be only provided to a smaller layer of the so-called meritorious sections in the disadvantaged sections. Means this will attend maybe the creamy layer of the disadvantaged sections, but not entire the disadvantaged section. Maybe attending only 5%, 10%, those who reach the higher education. You know, very fewer sections will reach the higher education. Among them, very creamy layer people will get these scholarships, but majority of the disadvantaged sections will not get scholarships. They will not get the stipends. So this will be another major exclusion. Those who join somehow in the higher educational institution in absence of reservation, then also they will be pushed out of the university because of the economic viability question they will be facing. And of course, this document speaks about 50% opportunities in higher education. The 50% of relevant youth age group will be provided higher education. Now it is 22%. They will increase to 50% by 2035. But this increase, it seems, will not be through establishment of new institutions. It will be through online education. And this online education will be to those disadvantaged sections again. So the disadvantaged sections means you will not get Rohit Vemula or Kannaya in the university campus anymore. They are creating a lot of nuisance for them. And all nowadays in universities from JNU to HCU to many universities, we have got many disadvantaged sections thanks to reservation, thanks to scholarships, thanks to stipends. But now when we withdraw these things, very fewer of them will be in universities and majority of them will have to pursue the online education. So there will be online education at school level and higher education also for the disadvantaged of the society. And only the advantaged, the privileged sections will go to the university and they will, the majority of them will sing the songs of the same party and same policy in power. So whatever 30% they want to increase higher education facilities, mostly they will be doing it by enhancing the provision in online, not institutional enhancement provisions and provisions, but the enhancement in higher education will be only through online. So one need not be carried away by the numbers of 50% youth will be educated, 30% will be only on online and they will be disadvantaged sections. And now let me proceed and organizers will tell me within 5 minutes when there is a 5 minutes notice. And let me go to the next point, very critical point. This is about appointments and promotions. In schools and colleges, universities, teachers will be appointed, but reservation will not be taken into consideration because there is no reservation provision there also. So appointments, they will not consider the reservation provision, number one. Number two, the appointments will be made on probation basis. There will be 2 years probation. In that 2 years, if you satisfy the authorities, it is called what they call is performance. If your performance is satisfactory, this performance is academic, this performance is personal, this performance is whether you oblige to the authorities, all these things matter. So when the authorities are satisfied, then only your probation period will complete and you will be, your job will be confirmed. So within 2 years of this probation period, I believe, there will be a lot of screening. Only those persons who are obliged to the authorities will be confirmed, others will be sent off their job. So there will not be reservation. Even those who get some job from different social backgrounds, even from forward caste and all that, they will have to also oblige without which they will not be able to continue. There are many persons from upper castes, so-called upper castes, that they are fighting with the government, and we see they are we are finding them now in the jails. So all such persons will not be confirmed. If you are speaking against the government policy, they will not be confirmed. So that is the recruitment policy. And then you have got the promotion policy. In the promotion policy also there will not be reservations, that is clear. And in the earlier document, October, November document, December documents, they have told that seniority need not be taken into consideration in promotions. Now they have hidden that. Now they have not written. Whether seniority will be considered or will not be considered is not written in the policy. But in the earlier drafts, they have written seniority will not be considered in promotions. So this is the hidden agenda of the policy. You can understand seniority will not be considered in promotions. Reservations will not be considered. Seniority will not be considered. Then the ultimate thing is the
Sir,
quality.
sorry to interrupt. 5 minutes more, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having told this.
Yes.
So the last point is that they are calling of merit, not qualifications. Please notice very carefully. They are talking of the merit, not qualifications. So merit is being gauged or is measured through qualifications, the publications in the international journals or referred journals, all those things. But now merit will not be understood on the basis of the qualifications. Merit will be understood on the basis of that they have told also. Your commitment to the institution. They will gauge your commitment. We don't know. We have no any measuring scale to gauge the commitment. Your commitment to the institution and your social outreach, how you reach out to the society. These are taken into consideration to understand your merit, not your qualifications. So even from the other sections of the society, if they are against the policy of the government, they will not be considered as meritorious. They will not be considered as committed to the institutions. They will not be considered as outreaching to the society. So the promotion policy is against not only reservation, against the seniority and against qualifications. So I have got actually 4 more questions, but let me tell them in 1 minute each. In this policy, there is a provision for infiltration. At school level, volunteers and counselors. At a higher education level, there is one BOG, Board of Governors. I take it more seriously. I believe we should take this Board of Governors more seriously than the National Higher Education Commission of India. Because this Board of Governors sit on the head of the university. And this Board of Governors persons will be filled from outside university. So the persons from outside university, mostly party people, will be sitting in the BOG, and BOG will be ruling the roost of in the university. So Board of Governors will be the ultimate attack on the university autonomy, and I have no time to elaborate. And another major issue is the informalization. The whole system will be informalized, such that the ruler means the rule of law will be seized, and the discriminatory authorities of the discretionary authorities of the officers will be playing the role. So the rule will be replaced by the discretion. This is another major point in this policy. And the last thing is that the Indian culture. The Indian culture, for them, the writers of this policy is something monolithic and very stable and frozen for them. But for us, for any country, for any culture, culture has got a structure. In culture there is a contradiction inbuilt into the culture, because the culture of the rulers is different from culture of the people. There is a contradiction inbuilt in the culture, number one. And the culture changes over time. You do not have Vedic culture, then you have got Puranic culture, then you have got Middle Ages culture, then you have got British culture, then you have got our struggle for reformation. If you are not speaking of a struggle for reformation, then you are talking of a culture of a select time, of a select area, of a select place, and of a select class. They are speaking of the culture of 2000 years period, back period, in Ganga Maidan, in the ruling class Brahminical culture. So the ruling class Brahminical culture of one day is being understood as Indian culture, and that will be imposed. Sanskrit will be imposed. Mother tongue is talked about, but mother tongue is also discouraged. And if there are any questions, I will take opportunity to elaborate. Thank you, webinar committee. Thank you for having this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insights on the 10 major issues that 10 major new issues that the NEP 2020 is bringing in. For our viewers from the Hindi region, maybe because if people have not been able to follow our talks in English, so I call upon Diksha to translate whatever or sum up whatever your arguments were in probably 5 to 10 minutes. Diksha?
Okay. Thank you, Shashank. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible, Diksha.
Okay. Okay. तो थैंक यू शशांक. नाउ मैं अब हिंदी में इसको थोड़ा ट्रांसलेट करने की कोशिश करूंगी. तो जैसे कि सर ने बताया कि सुब्रमण्यम कमेटी बनी सबसे पहले, और नहीं, पहले एक क्वेश्चनर ऑनलाइन निकाला गया और लोगों के रिव्यूज लिए गए, बट उस पे क्या आंसर्स मिले, क्या रेस्पॉन्स मिला, उसको डिस्क्लोज नहीं किया गया. ठीक है. फिर उसके बाद सुब्रमण्यम कमेटी आई. उसके बाद सुब्रमण्यम कमेटी की रिपोर्ट 2016 में आई, और इस रिपोर्ट को भी डिस्क्लोज नहीं किया गया और मीडिया में भी निकाला नहीं गया. पर फिर सुब्रमण्यम ने अपनी जो रिपोर्ट है उन्होंने मीडिया पब्लिश किया. सर के मुताबिक ये सुब्रमण्यम जो कमेटी की जो रिपोर्ट थी उसको इसलिए पब्लिक नहीं किया गया क्योंकि वो रिपोर्ट सरकार के अनुसार नहीं थी. ठीक है. इसके बाद कस्तूरी रंगन जो है उन कमेटी बनाई गई उनकी, और उनकी पहली रिपोर्ट अक्टूबर 2018 में आई, और इसके बाद नेक्स्ट ड्राफ्ट जो है वो 31 दिसंबर 2019 में आया. इसके बाद 53 पेजेस का उसके बाद 29 जून को जो है फाइनल ड्राफ्ट बाहर आया जिसको NEP 2020 कहा गया. इसके अंदर जो भी रिपोर्ट्स पहले आई, जो भी ऐसी चीजें थी जो सरकार के अनुसार नहीं थी, उनको हटा दिया गया, और ये पूरा ड्राफ्ट आया 29 जून को, ये सरकार के खुद के टर्म्स और कंडीशंस पे बेस्ड था. इसके बाद सर ने जो 10 चीजों की बात करी है, तो उसमें सबसे पहली चीज सर ने बताई कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वैल्यूज की. हमारी संवैधानिक वैल्यूज का कैसे हनन हुआ है इस NEP 2020 में. कोविड-19 की वजह से हमारे संसदीय प्रोसीडिंग्स नहीं हो रही थी, तो कैसे संसदीय मीटिंग्स में जो स्क्रूटिनी होते हैं, डिस्कशन होता है, कैसे उसके बिना इस पॉलिसी को बनाया गया है. पहली बात तो ये है. दूसरा, इस पॉलिसी में से सोशलिज्म एंड सेक्युलरिज्म जो टर्म्स इनको मेंशन नहीं आ गया, इसका भी इसकी कोई भी बात नहीं की गई है NEP 2020 में. और सर ने बताया कि बीजेपी के MP हैं, उन्होंने तो ये तक कह दिया था कि ये जो 2 शब्द हैं हमारे संविधान में से निकाल देने चाहिए, क्योंकि इनका हमारी सोसाइटी से, हमारे और हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में, संविधान में इनकी कोई जगह नहीं है, रेलेवेंट नहीं है हमारी सोसाइटी के लिए, हमारे समाज के लिए, जिस तरीके से हम लोग हैं. अब जैसा कि मैंने बताया कि हमारे NEP में से ये सोशलिज्म और सेक्युलरिज्म दोनों टर्म्स निकाल दिए गए हैं. इससे ये होगा कि जो एजुकेशन के थ्रू जो सोशल जस्टिस होता है वो भी, उसको भी किस तरह से डिनाई कर दिया जाएगा. ठीक है. और फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज का रिपीटेड रेफरेंस दिया गया है NEP 2020 में. फंडामेंटल राइट्स की कोई बात नहीं कही गई है. दूसरा पॉइंट जो है वो है कमर्शलाइजेशन, विपणन. तो जैसा कि मैंने पहले बताया कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, हमारे संवैधानिक वैल्यूज का कैसे हनन हुआ है, तो कमर्शलाइजेशन का लाना भी एक तरीके से हमारे संविधान का हनन ही है, क्योंकि हमारा संविधान कमर्शलाइजेशन की बात नहीं करता है. और और रही बात एजुकेशन सेक्टर्स, जो प्राइवेट सेक्टर्स हैं वो फीस के थ्रू या जैसे भी अपना फंड्स रेज करेंगे उसको अपने इंस्टीट्यूशन पे लगाने के बजाय एजुकेशन सेक्टर में लगाने की बात की गई है NEP 2020 में। इससे हमें सरकार की इस मंशा का पता लगता है कि कैसे वो प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूशंस को पैसा जनरेट करने के लिए कहती है, पर दूसरी तरफ उस पैसे को अपने इंस्टीट्यूशन पे खर्च ना करने के बजाय कैसे उसको एजुकेशन सेक्टर में बाहर देशों में अदर यूनिवर्सिटीज में इन्वेस्ट करने के लिए एक इशारा करती है। कैसे एक हिडन एजेंडा है कि आप पैसा जनरेट करो और उसके बाद उसको एजुकेशन सेक्टर में लगाओ, इंडिया में नहीं बल्कि बाहर। इससे जो है कमर्शलाइजेशन और बढ़ेगा। जैसे कि पहले अभी इसी साल में हमें सुनने को मिला था कि जियो यूनिवर्सिटी है जो अभी तक बनी भी नहीं है, वो सिर्फ कागजों में है, पर फिर भी वो टॉप 10 के अंदर है। तीसरी चीज है स्कूल एजुकेशन पे कि आरटी कहता है कि नर्सरी से नहीं, राइट टू एक्ट, सॉरी, जो आरटी है वो ये बोलता है कि 1 से 8 क्लास तक सारे बच्चों को कंपलसरी और फ्री एजुकेशन होनी चाहिए। आइडियली होना ये चाहिए कि प्री स्कूलिंग भी हो, पर ये बहुत ही सराहनीय बात है कि NEP 2020 प्री स्कूलिंग को भी इंक्लूड कर रही है। बट इस NEP 2020 में से फ्री और कंपलसरी, जो फ्री और कंपलसरी शिक्षा जो है वो शब्द नहीं है इसमें। तो और एक तरफ तो ये शब्द हटा दिए गए हैं, दूसरी तरफ सर्वव्यापीकरण की भी बात हो रही है, शिक्षा का सर्वव्यापीकरण की भी बात हो रही है। पर अगर फ्री और कंपलसरी शब्द अगर हम हटा देंगे तो ये सर्वव्यापीकरण अपने आप ही एक बहुत ही क्वेश्चनेबल चीज बन जाएगी। ये भी बहुत ही हिडन चीज है हमारे NEP में। दूसरा है कि सर ने बताया कि एजुकेशन का दायरा बढ़ा दिया गया है, जैसे प्री स्कूलिंग इंक्लूड कर दी गई है, पर जिम्मेदारी किसकी कैसी होगी उसका कोई मेंशन नहीं है। एक नेक्स्ट है कि 5+3+3+4 जो एक फॉर्मेट लाया गया है स्कूलिंग का, ये इतना क्वेश्चनेबल तो नहीं है, पर इससे इसमें जो स्ट्रीम्स को जो हटा दिया गया है कि लोग बच्चों का स्ट्रीम्स के बेसिस पे डिस्क्रिमिनेशन नहीं होगा, उससे ये होगा कि जैसे सर ने बताया कि हर बच्चे को हर सब्जेक्ट पढ़ने को नहीं मिलेगा, और इससे ये होगा कि जो गरीब बच्चे हैं, जो मार्जिनलाइज सेक्शन के बच्चे हैं, उनको एक तरीके से वोकेशनल एजुकेशन की तरफ धकेल दिया जाएगा, और जो अमीर बच्चे हैं वो ही अपनी पढ़ाई को आगे कंटिन्यू कर पाएंगे। और एक किस तरीके से एक लेबर क्लास भी मेंटेन की जाएगी इसके थ्रू, कि जो चाहे तो अगर वो पढ़ाई में अच्छा नहीं कर पा रहे हैं तो वो वोकेशन कोर्स की तरफ जाएंगे, और किस तरीके से एक लेबर क्लास मेंटेन की जाएगी, और जो काफी सक्षम है, अमीर है, वो ही फर्दर एजुकेशन परस्यू कर पाएंगे। इससे हम देख रहे हैं कि शिक्षा में से कैसे ये एक छन्नी का काम कर रहा है, कैसे ये बच्चों को जो मार्जिनलाइज सेक्शन के हैं उनको शिक्षा में से बाहर धकेलेगा और छान के अमीरों को ऊपर पहुंचाएगा। और सर्वव्यापीकरण के में एक ये भी बात की गई है कि ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन दी जाएगी। जो लोग स्कूल नहीं आ पा रहे हैं, वो फॉर्मल एजुकेशन नहीं ले पा रहे हैं, तो उनके लिए ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन प्रोवाइड की जाएगी। और हमें ये भी देखना है कि स्कूल कौन नहीं आ पाते हैं, हमारे जो गरीब तबके के बच्चे हैं वो स्कूल नहीं आ पाते हैं, तो अगर वो स्कूल नहीं आ पा रहे हैं तो उनको ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन कैसे दी जाएगी, क्योंकि उनके पास वैसे ही एक्सेस नहीं है, पैसों का एक्सेस नहीं है, अपॉर्चुनिटीज का एक्सेस नहीं है। पर इसके बावजूद भी सरकार NEP ये एक एक्सपेक्टेशन रखती है कि जो स्कूल नहीं आ पा रहे हैं वो ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन ले। ये अपने आप में बहुत ही कंट्रास्टिंग है। नेक्स्ट चीज है सेंट्रलाइजेशन, केंद्रीकरण, शिक्षा का सेंट्रलाइजेशन। जो UGC, NAC और इस तरह की अलग अलग बॉडीज हैं उनको हायर एजुकेशन कमीशन ऑफ इंडिया के अंदर क्लब कर दिया जाएगा। स्टेट गवर्नमेंट का रोल जो पहले था और उसका कोई मेंशन नहीं है। स्टेट गवर्नमेंट का जो हमारे राज्य की सरकारें हैं उनका क्या रोल होगा एजुकेशन में, फ्रेमिंग में, करिकुलम बनाने में, पॉलिसीज बनाने में अपने स्टेट की, उनका कोई मेंशन नहीं है। इससे हमें पता लग रहा है कैसे शिक्षा का केंद्रीकरण हो रहा है। सारे शिक्षा से रिलेटेड फैसले जो हैं जो अब केंद्र सरकार के हाथ में आ जाएंगे। सर ने एनसीएफ की बात करी जो कि एनसीईआरटी ने 2005 में निकाला था, और एससीईआरटी जो हैं स्टेट्स के जो करिकुलम फ्रेमवर्क का जो ये बॉडी है एससीईआरटी, इनके पास कैसे राइट होता था, इनके पास फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी होती थी कि वो एनसीएफ की गाइडलाइंस को ध्यान में रखते हुए अपना खुद का करिकुलम फ्रेम करें। पर एनईपी में इस चीज का भी खात्मा होते हुए हम देख रहे हैं। सारा जो भी करिकुलम फ्रेमवर्क है, जो करिकुलम फ्रेम होगा वो एक सेंट्रल लेवल का होगा, वो थ्रू आउट दी कंट्री सेम होगा। एनटीए का सर ने मेंशन किया है कि कैसे एनटीए के थ्रू एनटीए भी एक छन्नी का काम करेगा, क्योंकि हम देखते हैं कि अलग अलग स्टेट्स में अलग अलग स्टेट बोर्ड्स होते हैं, उनके सिलेबस भी अलग होते हैं। पर 12th के बाद उनको ग्रेजुएशन में आने के लिए एक सिंगल टेस्ट है जो सबके लिए है, और वो एक पैमाना यूज कर रहा है सबको चेक करने का। तो किस तरीके से ये जो पैमाना है बच्चों को अपॉर्चुनिटीज नहीं देगा, बच्चों को छानेगा। जो अदर स्टेट बोर्ड्स के बच्चे हैं उनकी अलग स्कूलिंग है, उन्होंने अलग चीजें पढ़ी है, और कैसे वो इस एग्जाम में अच्छा परफॉर्म नहीं कर पाएंगे और कैसे वो इस दौड़ से बाहर हो जाएंगे। ये भी एक्सक्लूजन का काम कर रहा है, बच्चों को बाहर धकेलने का काम कर रहा है। इसके बाद सर ने हायर एजुकेशन कोर्सेज की बात करी, कैसे अलग अलग ग्रेजुएट ये आफ्टर स्कूल ये जो हायर एजुकेशन के कोर्सेज हैं वो निकाले गए हैं। 4 ईयर ऑनर्स डिग्री है, 5 ईयर इंटीग्रेटेड कोर्स निकाला गया है। और ये एक नई चीज इस बार एनईपी में आई है कि कोर्स को छोड़ने के एक अलग अलग पॉइंट्स बना दिए गए हैं कि 1 ईयर करने के बाद आप ड्रॉप कर सकते हैं, आप 2 ईयर कोर्स परसू करने के बाद भी ड्रॉप कर सकते हैं और आपको सर्टिफिकेट दे दिए जाएंगे। ये भी एक तरीका है कि जो गरीब बच्चा है उसको कैसे डिस्क्रिमिनेट कर देना है कि वो निकल जाएगा, पर उसके पास सर्टिफिकेट तो होगा पर उसके पास नॉलेज नहीं होगी, तो वो सर्टिफिकेट किसी यूज का नहीं है जब तक उसके पास नॉलेज नहीं है। क्योंकि आगे अगर वो बढ़ेगा तो उसको नॉलेज होनी चाहिए, बिना नॉलेज के हम आगे नहीं बढ़ सकते हैं, हालांकि हमारे पास कितने भी सर्टिफिकेट्स क्यों ना हो। अब इसमें भी हम ये देख रहे हैं कि जो अपॉर्चुनिटीज हैं वो अमीरों के लिए है, वो ही अपनी पूरी फुल डिग्री परसू कर पाएंगे, उनके पास सर्टिफिकेट्स होंगे और उनके पास नॉलेज भी होगी। गरीब के पास सिर्फ सर्टिफिकेट होगी, उसके पास नॉलेज नहीं होगी, अगेन वो वोकेशनल कोर्सेज की तरफ धकेल दिए जाएंगे और लेबर क्लास बन जाएंगे, उनको आगे बढ़ने के लिए कोई अपॉर्चुनिटी नहीं होगी। अच्छा, सर ने ये एक चीज बहुत ही ज्यादा हाईलाइट की है कि हमारी जो एनईपी है वो कमर्शलाइजेशन पे बेस्ड है और वो मनु और मार्केट को बढ़ावा देगी, वो हमारे एजुकेशन को बढ़ावा नहीं देगी, एजुकेशन फॉर ऑल को बढ़ावा नहीं देगी, वो मनु और मार्केट को बढ़ावा देगी। और ये पॉलिसी जो है वो कास्ट, जेंडर और क्लास की जो दीवारें हैं जिनको हम एजुकेशन के हेल्प से तोड़ना चाहते हैं, ये हमारी जो एनईपी है ये इन वॉल्स को, इन दीवारों को और भी मजबूत बनाएगी। और इसी के अंदर रिजर्वेशन की बात है कि रिजर्वेशन बी.आर. अम्बेडकर द्वारा इसको प्रपोज किया गया था और उनके ही सतत प्रयासों की वजह से ये रिजर्वेशन आया और इससे एसटी, एससी, ओबीसी, माइनॉरिटीज हैं, मार्जिनलाइज सेक्शंस है हमारी सोसाइटी के, उनको ऊपर आने का एक सीढ़ी मिली रिजर्वेशन के थ्रू। पर ये जो एनईपी 2020 है इसमें कोई जिक्र नहीं हो, तो इससे फिर हमें पता लग रहा है कि ये एसटी, एसटी, ओबीसी, विमेन, आजकल विमेन को भी रिजर्वेशन मिलता है, विमेन है, मार्जिनलाइज सेक्शन जो है उनको कैसे बाहर निकाला जाएगा शिक्षा में से। और स्कॉलरशिप्स भी अब माइनॉरिटी से नहीं होंगी, वो मेरिट के बेसिस पे मिलेंगी। और अगेन ये अपॉर्चुनिटीज को कर्व करने वाला एक कदम है। और अपॉइंटमेंट्स एंड प्रमोशन की सर बात करते हैं तो इसमें भी एनईपी ये कहती है कि जो टीचर्स की अपॉइंटमेंट होगी और उनकी जो प्रमोशन होगी, उनकी जो तरक्की होगी, वो उसमें रिजर्वेशन का कोई लेना देना नहीं, वो रिजर्वेशन के बेसिस पे नहीं होगी, वो उनके परफॉर्मेंस के बेसिस पे होगी। जो 2 साल का प्रोबेशन पीरियड होता है, उस प्रोबेशन पीरियड में वो कैसे अपने आप को प्रस्तुत करते हैं, कैसा उनका परफॉर्मेंस होगा, वो अथॉरिटीज जो है उसको असेस करेंगी और उसके बेसिस पे उनको प्रमोशन मिलेगा। तो ये एक और हम इसको कह सकते हैं, ये भी एक तरीके की छन्नी है जिससे अगेन जो माइनॉरिटीज हैं, डिसएडवांटेज हैं, उनको कैसे नीचे छान दिया जाएगा, और जो अमीर हैं, जिनके कॉन्टैक्ट्स हैं, उनके जिनके पास रिसोर्सेज हैं, वो ही ऊपर आ पाएंगे। और अगर मार्जिनलाइज्ड या फिर SC ST OBC का कोई इंसान अगर आगे निकल भी जाता है तो वो प्रमोट ना होके नीचे ही रह जाएगा। तो मेजरली NEP मेरिट की ही बात कर रही है, क्वालिफिकेशन की नहीं। आप क्वालिफाइड हो उससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा अनटिल और अनलेस आप मेरिटोरियस नहीं हो। और इससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता कि आप किस तबके से आए हो, कितना मार्जिनलाइज्ड हो, अगर आप मेरिटोरियस हो तो ही आपको आगे बढ़ने की इजाजत मिलेगी। तो हाँ, बस इतना ही। दैट्स इट। थैंक यू।
Thank you, Diksha, for translating it for us and our viewers here. To add on to what Diksha had said, and to take the discussion forward, I asked Professor Hargopal to take the discussion forward or note down his Ramesh's talk.
Yeah. Friends, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. Friends, I think it's very difficult to be a discussant to Ramesh, because the difference between him and me is Ramesh is so good in specifics, in details. I am so bad that I talk of generalities and Ramesh talks of specifics. Now, that's the advantage of an activist all through life. And the way he presented the specifics, I would sum up for discussion into broadly 4 points. It can be summed up. One is, of course, the constitutional values and social justice. Now, in the constitutional scheme of things, they provided Part 4 of the Indian Constitution and Part 3, freedoms. Ramesh said both are affected. Freedoms are provided to realize the goals of the Part 4 of Indian Constitution. That's the scheme of things. People have the freedom, people have the rights to struggle, to assert, to articulate, to realize the social justice. What this document does is it curtails the freedoms for the people to agitate, to organize, what Dr. Ambedkar said, so that the social justice concerns which Ramesh raised can gradually be diluted. This is what the document does. The second point that's very important, which perhaps he didn't have much of the time, is that what is the purpose of education? He talked about the social justice, equity. In fact, if you look at the emblem of the University of Hyderabad, in fact, it says education that liberates. This is the emblem, education that liberates. Hyderabad University was established in 1974. So in 1970s, there was still concern of the liberation of the education, this role as a liberator, as an emancipator. Now, how do you transform a society, a given iniquitous social structure or iniquitous economic structure? Now, the Constitution has given us a vision in the preamble but constitution did not provide the mechanism as to how to translate the vision of the constitution into action. That is the one of the major limitations of the constitution. If you go to the, for example, abolition of untouchability, Article 17, they have provided it. But by 1955, they realized that providing a right in the constitution is not enough. So 1955, they had to pass another legislation for the rights of the Civil Rights Protection Act. But 1955 Act also did not help. In 1989, you realize that 1955 Act did not create the impact, and therefore you bring the entire protection again, SC/ST Atrocities Prevention Act, in which you provide the details of the atrocities what are committed. But after 1989, if you look at the Dalit question, still it remains unresolved. So in other words, Constitution provided social justice, but enforcing social justice is left to the social movements. This is the dilemma of the whole thing. So if education has to transform the existing structure, iniquitous, unjust, unfair system into a fair, equitous, egalitarian society. And the present education policy reinforces the existing socio-economic structure and does not provide, because as Ramesh said, that constitutional values do not get resonated in the document, largely because that the constitution demands social justice. But this document reinforces, because the way the socio-economic structure of this country developed, the constitution was to give us a one direction, but the economy, politics of this country moved in another direction. And therefore now we find there is a conflict between the constitutional vision and the policy visions. I mean, this conflict, now therefore you have to judge the existing economic system as against the constitutional vision. And there is a serious contradiction between the socio-economic development and the Constitution of India. I think that's what explains what Ramesh tried to talk of social justice and the other concerns, the reservation, affirmative action, equity concerns. All those concerns are getting into a deeper crisis. But I am a little puzzled. Maybe Ramesh also may reflect that why the Dalit sections who reacted to the so forcefully the enforcement of the Mandal Commission. In fact, it's the Dalit movement which has fought the entire question of Mandal and the reaction and counter-reaction. But today, the document has come, but we do not find the sections, marginalized sections, taking it very seriously. Only Hyderabad University students, Dalit Students Union asked me to give 2 lectures. But we do not find that type of reaction from the society. So I think this is one concern. The second thing, of course, what Ramesh talked about, the commercialization, privatization, and how they brought, of course, he has written an article where he brought the philanthropy, because he didn't have time to talk of the philanthropy. He said PPP is a private, public philanthropy participation. And this also has to be debated. It's a very serious question, because philanthropy, they are smuggling philanthropy into their document in order to legitimize their politics. So if you talk of the philanthropy, yes, there was a philanthropy during the freedom struggle. And if you look at Tata's and Birla's, there was a philanthropy. And Tata started Indian Institute of Bangalore, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Tata Institute of Social Science, where I worked for 3-4 years. All of them, Tata didn't make money. So is the case with Birla. Pilani Institute didn't make money. But as Ramesh rightly mentioned, that Ambani wants to start a university, and the government provides 1,000 crores. Where is the philanthropy? If Ambani wants to start a university as well, he can start as well, like Tata started. But the existing economic philosophy completely abandons philanthropy. The reason being that capitalism has certain compassion, for its own justification. It knows, it is very more enlightened. It knows from Adam Smith downwards, capitalism will collapse, that they know. And therefore they provide, common school system in America is one way that they wanted to correct. But today, the neoliberalism redefines the philosophical assumption from the self-interest to selfishness. So once you make selfishness the guiding factor of your economic development, then the philanthropy is the major casualty. And with the result, this document talks of the philanthropy not in a genuine sense, but it talks of the philanthropy to smuggle some of their own politics and organizations into the system. I think that's, I thought, one point on which there can be a lot of debate. Another point which Ramesh raised is the multiple exits in the system, whether it is school education, higher education. School education, they can exit at some point, they can go for vocational education. In the higher education, after 1 year, you can drop out. The second year, you can exit. Now, in other words, the dropout question, which is one of the very serious challenges to education policy and education system, this document legitimizes exit policy. It doesn't talk of dropout. See, you drop out, you will get a diploma, you get a certificate, you get a degree. So multiple exit is literally the reification or the reinforcement of the existing structure. And by providing multiple exit points, they are emphasizing the entire social structure. So when you talk of the vocational education right in the school education, you are talking of the carpentry, or you are talking of the blacksmith or goldsmith, whatever they vocational education they have not yet defined, you are justifying the existing caste system. The child will drop out in the 7th class or 8th class, and then you put him in the occupation, and then that occupation, he will go back to the same occupation. Instead of transforming the existing occupational structure, because any capitalism provides social mobility. If a child comes from the Dalit background or OBC background, very meritorious, they tap that merit. That's the common school. You tap merit wherever it's available. That's how capitalism develops. In our system, social structure comes in the way of that's why ours is not a genuine capitalism. It's a predatory capitalism. And therefore, you find that this document, the underlying essence of the document is to reinforcing existing structure. And so is the case is concerned with the centralization. So, in my present interaction in the AFRTE, I was saying that when there is a concentration of power, concentration of wealth, there is also a hegemonization of culture. So what you find that the power, wealth and culture, they are moving in the direction of centralization. And with the result, you see the impact of this on the education policy document, because you have to centralize, hegemonize. Hegemonization through the NCERT, they formulating the curriculum, which Ramesh mentioned. So you find that there is a cultural concentration, because the educational curriculum is going to be prepared. And the entire education system of India, entire university education, which he mentioned, will be controlled by the center. And what happened to federal structure? What happened to state governments? Now that concern, completely federal structure is ignored in this document, and state governments are not even raising the question. That's our concern. And therefore, I would think that the constitutional value, social justice, centralization and commercialization, and the cultural, stranglehold, cultural stranglehold. Yeah, I'll complete it. Cultural stranglehold. I think these are the central concerns of his 10 specific points, which he tried to mention. So the last, to come back to Ramesh's concerns. Now the AFRTE, if it goes back to its own agenda, and when we talk about the common school system, and when we talk about the free and compulsory education, equitable quality, whatever we have talked, I think this new education policy redefines our agenda also. Now, as far as our agenda is concerned, new issues have to come back onto the agenda, and that is where perhaps it has opened up opportunities for the education movement to expand into larger concerns. And I think from your 10 specific points, what I draw is that AFRT may have to relook at its own the way we have defined the Chennai Declaration, or later whatever we have been concentrating. Maybe now we fought against the World Bank entry, global entry and all that. But now the reservation question provides us ample opportunity of expanding our possibilities. So that the federal structure, so that the role of the education. I think then transformation of the existing hierarchical, rigid, caste structure. I think these issues we may have to bring back, and I think your lecture brings out these points so well that I think we may have to revisit our own movement in the light of what Ramesh has raised in his very brilliant lecture. I stop here.
Thank you so much, sir, for making it a very fruitful discussion here today. Before Ramesh sir could respond, if he has any points to Hargopal sir's notes, there are also a few questions that I would like to put forth, in the sense our viewers have been asking around these questions. If you could connect all this, that would be much better. Or if we want to take it one over the other, then that would as well be fine, sir.
Will you be reading out the questions for me?
Yes, sir. I can read out the questions for you. First, Dr. Alakadas has asked if you could explain a bit more on the informalization of higher education. Ramurthy sir has noted that it is claimed that provision related to regulation of education sector and opening it up for private players are in accordance with WTO agreement and commitments. To what extent this is correct and justified? And then Dr. Vikas Gupta is asking implications of the Supreme Court judgment approving the 25% quota for EWS in the RTE for the education. Does it not make some passing reflections on education being a public good and service?
Shall I take up?
Yes, sir, you could please.
The first question is about the informalization of the whole system. Actually, in the course of other points I have discussed it, I wanted to only sum up it. Say, as on date, a school child will have to learn social sciences, biological sciences, physical sciences, mathematics, 3 languages. But now they are telling about 20 subjects will be there. They have not given the number, but it looks about 20 subjects will be there in the school education. Child will have the option to select 5 or 7 subjects out of these 25 subjects. So this is informalization, because as long as there is no structure is being dissolved. So it looks like a choice for the child. But the choice will be exercised on the basis of the conditions of the child at home and conditions of the school. So it looks like a choice, but it will push him to the vocational education. So this, as long as there is a rigid structure of a course, like social sciences, natural sciences, mathematics, Hindi, Telugu, English, in this way, there was no choice, there was a rigidity, but then every child had the opportunity. But now they have informalized it, and this informalization has is pushing the children towards disadvantaged sections, children towards the vocationalization. I added here that when education is found on the base of commercialization, and when the rulers look back, then a flexibility will transform into a disadvantageous thing to the poor and disadvantaged. It looks like a flexibility, but it transforms into its opposite. In philosophy, we say in dialectics, it transforms into its opposite, because the basic is wrong. The basic is commercialization, and the rulers looking backward to re-establish the old caste system, old vocational systems. So that is by informalizing they are doing it. In higher education, they are introducing this choice-based credit system. Of course, Congress also tried to do it. In some places, it's also in implementation. But here also again, say for in Andhra Pradesh or any state, any degree, economics students study mostly history and political thought along with economics. So his economics get well contextualized where he has to work. What is the historical background of his society? What is the political conditions of his society? Then he will apply economics for the upliftment of the people. But now under this choice-based credit system, the student need not read history, he need not read political thought. He will read only economics. And then economics is now they are changing to the economics of practical economics, business-oriented economics. That economics they will learn. They will learn some computer. They will learn some psychology, and they will become human resources executive for the corporate houses. They will not be useful for the society and for the upliftment of the people in this society. So this choice-based credit system informalizes our courses. In this informalization, when the market is operating outside, because the student will have to go for the job market. So the job market will guide your higher education. As long as today, job market is not guiding our education directly in that way, when our education becomes small pieces like credits, then student has given a choice to select the credits. Then student will select only those credits which will be of use in the market, job market. So informalization of courses, that you have destructed the structure, economics, political thought and economics, this structure is being destructed. Informalization is being introduced. Choice is talked about. And then now the market forces can play free in the disturbed situation. So I need not elaborate much. Everywhere you have this say promotion. As long as promotion is concerned, we have got the reservation. Then you have got seniority. Then you have got qualifications. Now it is informalized. These things need not be followed. Then the commitment of the employee to the institution and his social outreach. Means whether he is going to RSS Shakha or not will be taken into consideration, it seems. So now you have informalized the promotion system. Then again, you can play your politics into the system. You can go to the university and play your politics. And in the BOG, Board of Governors, in the Board of Governors, you have got people from outside. In the earlier documents, they told 50%. We were criticizing that 50% people from outside will be ruling the university. Now they have withdrawn that sentence. We don't know whether now there will be 60% or 70%. It is not that they have withdrawn the outsiders provision. They have withdrawn this. So if we go back to their own documents, then we will understand outsiders will rule the university. So as long as there is an executive committee, as long as there is an academic council, as long as there was a negotiation with the teachers union, as long as there is an official students union, all those structures are not being talked about at all. All these structures are being dissolved, informalized. And now BOG will come and rule the university. So let me cut short and go to the next point. Some friend Alok asked me about WTO and GATS. The point is that you must have been following the international politics and trade. Now America is being cornered in WTO. And now they are lamenting that we have admitted China and China is overpowering WTO. And our chances in trade and business are being getting limited. So we will go out of WTO. They're telling they will go out of WTO. So now WTO operations are at low key. At some stage in 2005, India has given initial offers in higher education to WTO, World Trade Organization. The second stage is commitment. We were very apprehensive in 2015 that in 2015 I do not recollect the ministerial conference in 2015 of WTO. India may commit to WTO higher education sector of India. We had a great apprehension from AIFRT and we had a 8 days demonstration in Delhi. But they could not pursue the services agreement in that because then they were very much in critical situation in agriculture, in goods, in patent types, other areas of more interest for the day. So they could not pursue the services agreement. So education could not be committed as the Indian government wanted. So my point is that WTO operations are now very weak now. America is not interested in WTO. So whatever commercialization, this is coming not because of WTO, maybe partly because of World Bank, but mostly because of both domestic and foreign capital want more commercialization, more centralization. And the only one limitation which TMFI put, that the profits cannot be repatriated, profits cannot be withdrawn from the institution, or will be done away with in future on the basis of this policy, because this policy is telling that you can spend in education sector either in the country or outside the country. Even that they have not stated. Means they are very hidden type of writing. Somebody may miss this. Education sector, okay, but the question is that education sector in India or outside, nobody knows it. So they have hidden many things. So this is the interest of the domestic and foreign capital, and there are many regional agreements. Many people must have noticed there are many regional agreements India is entering. In those regional agreements also services will be there, education will be there. So now they want to do away with all restrictions on trade in education in India. So they are bringing this policy, and they will have to bring a legislation for this. Because on the date Constitution, court or Indian legislation have not agreed to make education a proper trade. You may differ with me, trade is going on, but legally it is not ill trade. And corporate houses want a legal position. They will not be wetting the hands of the officers at every office. They want a strong legal position in favor of trade, and unless you bring such a legislation in favor of shifting the capital, withdrawing the capital, they will not invest. So now that may come, a new legislation may come, and that we will have to wait. And wait means we have to prepare the people to fight such a possible new legislation. If we can campaign effectively in the meanwhile, then certainly we will be able to resist this possible legislation. And Dr. Vikas has asked about the 25% reimbursement quota in Right to Education Act. This is the whole problem is this reimbursement quota is understood in different ways. Professor Santa Sinha believes it, sorry to have taken her name, sorry I should have not taken, that some organizations, some people believe that it is that provision of quality education to the poor people in corporate schools and colleges. They do not means what is the quality education is to be first defined, of course. You leave all that. But that such a provision is 25% reservation under Right to Education Act. But for whatever reasons, the corporate houses not yet have exploited that provision. Rather, in Rajasthan, private associations have gone a case against this 25% reservation. There is a possibility that the corporate houses can establish low-cost private schools throughout India and provide 25%, even 50% seats to the poor to get reimbursement from the government, because the provision has got a reimbursement provision. So reimbursement is the World Bank policy. When there is an opposition, when the government was withdrawing from education, health, drinking water, social facilities, there was a lot of opposition throughout the world. World Bank suggested the governments to withdraw from the social provision. And different governments did it. And there was a lot of furor throughout the world. Then World Bank has changed its policy and said that you can provide social services to the people, education, health, drinking water, all that, but only through private agencies. So the reimbursement policy has come. I don't know how it is in other states, in undivided Andhra Pradesh, and in both states of Telangana and Andhra, there is a reimbursement policy. Child joins, student join in engineering college, fees will be reimbursed by the government. Person join in the corporate hospital, the fees will be reimbursed by the government. So government get a good name that we have been provided corporate education. But otherwise, the thing is that corporates are getting money. They are not really providing education. They are not really providing health. That a lot of analysis is being published on what type of health and education are being provided by the corporate houses. So the policy is to provide public services to the private agencies, public-private partnership. Now this BJP is talking of public philanthropic partnership. So this is to siphon the public funds to the private agencies. So now they have gone for this. So whether they will continue with the Right to Education Act, only paraphrasing Professor Hargopal when he said that Constitution of India has become radical document, I am arguing with my friends in All India Forum for Right to Education to revisit Right to Education Act, whether it has become a progressive document now, with all its limitations, whether it has become a progressive document. For me, other than 25% reservation, all other provisions, secular curriculum that is there in the Right to Education is going to be attacked. Distance norm is going to be attacked. Regular teacher concept is going to be attacked. The student coming to the institution is being attacked. His continuation and participation in education is being attacked. His continuous promotion is being attacked. Online education is not there. It's all institutional education, Right to Education Act. So now Right to Education Act has become a very big shackle for the chains for the new regime. They want to do away with it. They have referred only in one sentence in the 66 pages on Right to Education Act and did not proceed any further without referring to it. In the documents, previous documents in the what you call the drafts, they told that Kasturirangan actually told that Right to Education Act should be extended from preschool to class 12. That sentence is being now withdrawn effectively. So these people are completely different people. As Professor Hargopal commented at the end, that the whole new agenda of the BJP, I think we have to understand it. We have to formulate our policy accordingly. And about 25%, I don't know what they will be going to do, but this pumping money to outside public sector to private agencies, now they are talking philanthropy. Nobody knows which is a philanthropic organization, which is a religious organization. Whether RSS runs Saraswati Sishu Mandirs will be philanthropic organizations or religious organizations. You cannot deline it. So the money will be passed. While the RSS people will come and sit in your universities in the board of governors, public money will go into the RSS institutions. Thank you, friends.
Thank you so much, sir. It's already 8:45 as of now. So I think we'll end up or wind up our webinar here. But before that, I'll read out a few comments for thoughts from the viewers who are viewing us live on Facebook. So Mettu Ravinder has noted that in one word we can call the policy the most undemocratic one. Ramandeep Bhagat has noted that national exclusion policy, the NEP, is a fascist policy formulated by the fascist regime to deny 85% of the Indian population their right to education and good life. Ramakrishna SA has noted in new policy teaching till 5th standard will be going to be in mother tongue only, and invited comments. I don't know if time permits us for commenting on these, and we also probably ask him to look back to our lecture with Joga Singh sir, previous one. That might be quite helpful in that regard. Mettu Ravinder again has noted it's not just enough to read between the lines in NEP 2020. Now we have to learn to read behind the lines. Kandagatla Prakash has noted, sorry sir, I disagree with your quote that on the lines that education that liberates is the emblem of HCU, which is in paradox, and with respect to the injustice that it did to Dalit students like Rohit Vemula and others on the campus. So these were a few comments that came in through our Facebook viewers. We hope at least Diksha has raised her hand. Yes, Diksha.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
सॉरी शशांक, वो शायद गलती से हो गया है. I said वो hand raise.
Acha, okay.
Now, I'll just comment one thing.
Yes, sir.
When I said the Hyderabad University emblem is education that liberates, that doesn't mean that Hyderabad University stuck to that emblem. That means in 1974 it was started, that was the social context and how the emblem has come. But what Injustice University of Hyderabad has done to the students, is very obvious. So that, but what I said is that was the vision that was guiding them. But actual, when it comes to the reality is so different. So I'm not saying that Hyderabad University emblem has guided the Hyderabad University, but that was the vision. But I always said that implementation enforcement is so different from vision. And I said constitutional vision is towards social justice, but socio-economic structure is completely departure from that vision. That's the idea that I was mentioning. Not that I said the Hyderabad University liberates and it's a liberating industry. I am sorry that if I misunderstood, I want to clarify on that. Yeah, because
Thank you
I was
for
yeah.
Ramurthy sir has raised his hand, but I'm not so sure if time would allow us for more discussions. Can I now request Vikas sir for presenting the vote of thanks to our esteemed speakers today?
Not audible.
I hope this is audible now. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would not really like to take much time. It's really a pleasure to listen Rameshji, like always. And I hope that maybe in some later sessions, we invite him to speak on one of these aspects in even detail. I mean, because that is what, at many places we felt really that there's a lot in each of the substantive points that he made. So, and particularly because he agreed to speak on this forum, on our own forum, obviously, on such a short notice. So that is more than, that's really very important. And Professor Hargopal agreed to be the discussant. I do not know when Professor Indrani Datta or on behalf of anybody could really reach out to him, maybe sometime during the day itself. So on such a short notice, again, he managed to stay over the entire session and gave wonderful ideas of discussion. So again, I mean, I just need to say this. I don't want to thank both of you. I want to particularly mention that the webinar committee has been really doing a wonderful job organizing these things. I mean, since I keep looking at their WhatsApp interactions, and every time early morning to late night, Professor Indrani Datta is writing something, Shashank is responding, Tavisha is responding. I mean, sometimes Madhusudan was responding, Dr. Prasad is taking it up. So I feel rather ashamed to, in fact, even present this vote of thanks. They all need to clap for each other, and we all need to clap for all of them. They've been really doing a wonderful job. And last, I would also like to say that, for a variety of reasons, I mean, this is unusual, really. The chairperson of such a big organization, Professor Jagmohan, is not just presiding over in silence over every session, but is providing all technical support as a computer scientist. I mean, that shows that actually, there's nothing, there's no kind of distinction between, skills that they want to promote and, the critical academic thinking that we are fighting for. There's actually no distinction. And I think this needs to be stated again and again, really the kind of support that our chairperson has been providing. And of course, this is very important, that the way this news spreads, and the different kinds of people who watch it during live and afterwards, I think if they would not have been there, the whole idea of organizing these online webinars would have been just a flawed, because sitting in isolated rooms and speaking, I mean, it's so discouraging that only the speakers can testify. But we are able to speak because we are able to speak out just because, this is, we know that there are viewers on the Facebook. So thanks to everyone, I wish, and I don't know why this is getting hanged. My bandwidth is low, but whatever. So I think with all this, Shashank, if I'm still audible, I think with thanks to everyone, we can close and again meet on coming Tuesday with another speaker on another exciting sub-theme of this webinar series.
Thank you so much, Vikas sir, for vote of thanks. In this regard, we also request all our viewers to share these series of webinars with their friends, family, and everybody else, so that we are able to demystify what the NEP has for all of us for the next 5 to 10 years at least.
And I think they need to also share and subscribe to our YouTube channel links, where we upload these series episodes after the webinar is over. I think there we are going a bit low. So we need to do that as well. So we request everybody to popularize the YouTube channel as well. Because there are many people who are not on Facebook. Of course, everybody can watch now on our Facebook, even if they are not having a Facebook account. But I think we really need to popularize our YouTube media as well.
Please share our videos when our eminent speakers are demystifying their NEPs for us. With that sense, nearing 9, we probably call it a day as of now. And thank you everybody for being a part of this webinar series yet again. We are looking forward to it again.